Good morning, happy Sunday. Absolutely beautiful this morning. We've had a really cold wind the last couple of days, and today the wind has just completely dropped, and it's lovely. Actually feels like May, which is extraordinary because it certainly hasn't felt like April yet. But I was pretty annoyed actually. So last week came up here and noticed that, so not on our allotment, but our allotment is the last one in the row, and so we've got, so our allotment ends and then you've got the path, then you've got the border with the school just there, and somebody has sprayed a weed killer all the way along the edge of the school, and the fence is just a mesh fence and it's blown through onto the path. So that's bad enough anyway. Like, you shouldn't be using weed killer right next to allotments firstly, and you shouldn't be using weed killer where the kids are playing in the school playing field, to be perfectly honest, but that's what they've done anyway. So I got up here, saw that it was all dying back, and contacted the school. The guy came over immediately, and we're just talking through the fence, and he said it's not the school. What it is that because we've got like cricket practice nets just here, bowling nets, and the people who rent the bowling nets off them, part of their contract is to keep the area tidy, and they've taken the idea of keeping the area tidy of just killing everything, which is just really beautiful. What a lovely mindset to have, huh? Anyway, I'm addedly peed off about this because you saw Mum and I putting the comfrey out there. Well, the comfrey's been got by the weed killer, and I've also been putting like cuttings of stuff out there. So whenever I've got, can you see this spider? Come on, Chummer. Gone. Yeah, so all the way along that, every time we've had some excess, like some self-seeded, say green alkanet or borage or comfrey or love in the mist, cuttings from the 2 dogwoods that we've got at the top there, I've just been sticking them along that edge because although it's not our space and it's a communal path, so obviously people need to get down it, but up until really recently it looked like this, just a mass of ivy and dead trees, which was fantastic in one sense because it was like we were totally private, like you wouldn't have even known there was a school there, and it also provided an incredible habitat for all the birds to be nesting in. I mean, it really was fantastic, but it is a pathway and it is the boundary to a school. And when they decided to replace the fence, they just ripped all of that out. So anyway, it wasn't the school that poisoned the area, but it was the cricket club. I've emailed the cricket club. I haven't had a response, obviously, but I will persevere with it because I want to foster quite a lot of a habitat along that edge, and I'm not having people spray weed killer across it. It's not on, basically. The school shouldn't be allowing people to spray weed killer on their property anyway. Sometimes they do use it, I think, on, you know, the driveways and stuff, which I still think it's stupid, but I can understand why they do it. But on the playing field, what are these people thinking? Anyway, let me show you the damage, and let me show you up the other end sort of what I'm trying to foster down here. But first up, Mum is shredding these. These were the cardboard boxes actually that the arches came in that we built, and we've just been shredding the cardboard to put in the compost. So we put cardboard in the compost because it increases the carbon to nitrogen ratio, which is good in a compost bin. Obviously taking all the sticky tape and staples and things out of the cardboard first, and then it's just a case of ripping it up. I mean, I know a lot of people use cardboard to start off kind of no dig beds and stuff, but we're not in a position where we need to do that. So our cardboard goes straight in the compost bin, and it gets ripped up because if we just plonked it straight down in there and we had quite a lot of it, it can form like a really, really soggy layer, which then stops the oxygen being able to kind of reach lower down in the compost heap, and then that's no good for the microorganisms. So then you're doing the opposite. Instead of speeding up the composting process, you're actually kind of completely stopping it below. So we're just shredding it and putting it in there. What's going on, Saf? What's happening? What's going on? I think someone must have laid an egg. Anyway, so this is the pathway just down here, and those photos I showed you, can you see, like, this is the same pond, and that's just the mass of ivy that was behind it. I mean, it's really quite different being so exposed to the school. But despite the being really exposed like that, what it has done is let loads more light in. And whereas before, although we had nesting places for the birds, none of this would have grown along here. It was just barren ground with ivy roots in it. So there is some advantages, but look at this. Look at this. I can't tell you how upsetting I find that. I can't, why would you do it? That's what I don't understand. Because look, on their side of the fence, there's no weeds there. There was nothing to kill. Why have they decided to do that? So here's some of the cornice cuttings that I've taken. It's possible these will survive. There's still a little bit of green on them, so it'll be all right. But the stuff that I planted this far up, that's all gone. All the lemon balm's dead. The stinging nettles, I've been transferring stinging nettles out here, actually, because they're so useful to the butterflies. There's a comfrey here, which oddly is right in the middle of the burn patch, but it's survived, whereas the ones that were further up, they're all gone. There's more cornice here. You can see, if I can get the camera to focus. Come on. Come on. Yeah, you can see this looks like it's survived because it's got a bit of greenery coming on it now. But, I mean, it makes me, it's not even cross, it makes me just really, really sad. And especially when everything's in flower, it's like the worst possible time to be spraying weed killers around, when the area is just covered in bees. Oh, look at that. It's just really disappointing. Because you can see they've sprayed all the back of their nets there, just kind of those bits. But then they've sprayed along here, like why? There was no reason to do it. Oh. You see the just bees everywhere. And this is right next to like, the wildlife area that we're fostering around the back of the pond. Yeah. Anyway, this is further up, and these are sort of the green alkanet and the white dead nettle and all that kind of stuff along here. And this just hums with bees. When you come around the top corner of the allotment, this is the first bit you see. And it's just humming. I mean, luckily, they didn't spray up this end. They only sprayed down the other end. But this is what I've been sort of trying to encourage. Basically, it's just really upsetting. But I'm going to go down and I'm going to strim up to it and just see what we can do. And, yeah, carry on, I suppose. So it's not ideal, is it? Really, I'm pretty peed off about it. I'm going to try and make sure it never happens again anyway. I'll get hold of the cricket people. So what else are we doing? The carrots are up. Both rows of carrots that I've sowed. So the earlier ones, obviously, they were up. And the new ones are germinating now. I've got to do a bit of weeding between them because, well, they just, they're a bit hidden with weeds coming up. So I'm going to do that. And then it's coming up to, it's about 12:15 lunchtime. I'm going to pick some chard because I'm going to make chard bechamel for lunch. So that's going to be delish. What else have we got to do? Oh, I've got loads of sowing to do, but I'm going to do a lot of that at home. I've got to sow the Achocha and just like loads of bits and pieces, spinach and all that kind of stuff that needs to go in. Yeah. So the carrots are up. There's a bit of weed kind of coming up right in the middle of the row, kind of between the carrots, so I'm just going to nip them out. I'm not going to thin the carrots at the moment. I mean, I've sowed them pretty thin anyway. There's a bit of a bunch up this end, but other than that, they're quite well spaced, so I'll leave it for that. The weeds that are right up entangled with them in the kind of the dense carroty bit, I'm just nipping off with my fingernails at soil level. I could pull them up, but at the moment the carrot roots are really kind of tiny, and if I'm pulling weeds up from between them, I'm going to disturb the roots, and I don't want to do that because obviously carrots are a taproot, so you don't want to disturb a carrot root ever. And so the ones that are right mixed in with them, I'm just nipping out with my fingers. Any that are quite far away, I will pull out by the root, and then I'm just going to hoe along between them. We don't use the sprinkler very often at all. In fact, very rarely. But we do use it on the asparagus patch. The sprinkler that we've got is quite good because you can control the size of it really carefully, and this asparagus patch is kind of the perfect block shape for using a sprinkler on. And the roots of the asparagus are spread all the way across this. Although when we planted them, they were in kind of individual crowns and they were quite isolated. Over the years they've spread, so they are across this whole area, and this is just the best way of watering them. It really is. Actually, I think we might have been a bit premature with the sprinkler. It's looking a bit moody up there. So like I was saying, for lunch, chard. Yeah, so I'm just going to pick this. This is the Lucullus's chard, which basically everything that's in here, like I said, has to be eaten before we get the plants, which are the aubergines and the tomatoes in. So yeah, this is going to be lunch. And then on this side over here, we've got more chard. And we've also got some spinach, which I'm going to cook, which is going to be part of dinner, which is going to be stuffed mushrooms. So yeah, a bit of a picking fest. So that's lunch. And then this is the spinach Americana, which is a gorgeous spinach actually. I really rate this one. Although this one is like bolted like crazy, and I'm just going to nip it off right at the bottom because obviously we're clearing the beds in here. It's actually so much slower to bolt than any of the other spinaches that I've grown, any of the Madonna or Manopa or any of those ones. I've just found this one to be brilliant. And it grows lush and wonderful. And actually, even when it gets to this size, the stems are still completely tender. So I found with some of the other spinaches, by the time you actually let the leaves get really big, you have to kind of strip the leaves off the stems, whereas with this one, not at all. I mean, look at the size of it. It's massive, obviously it's bolted, but ignore that. But these stems, they're hollow and they cook down like just as well as the leaves. So I just snap that. You see they're like really, although they're a big stem, they're quite thin and there's nothing in the middle. So you can just kind of cook the whole lot, which just makes prepping so much easier. What's this? Okay, hail is over. Just before we go home, I'm going to strip a load of the sprouting bits off these various brassicas we've got in here, starting with the kalettes. So the kalettes were looking really promising, but we've let the chickens in here a couple of times and basically they've just completely stripped the stems, so there ain't no kalettes. So now we're just eating them for blown bits. And this is purple sprouting broccoli. I've let a couple of these go actually, which is a bit of a shame, but they're going to go really nicely. This whole medley of sprouting things is going to go really nicely with the stuffed mushrooms tonight. So I'm quite looking forward to it. If you catch them early enough, I mean, if you let these go to flower point, they get really tough stems and then they're not that pleasant to eat. But at this stage, they're absolutely fine. So that's a mix of kalettes, blown purple sprouting broccoli, and then I'm also going to take some of the white cauliflower sprouts. Well, this was the first year we've grown them and they were really, really tasty. And considering we only had the one plant, pretty prolific, really. Grumpy bum. Right, we're off, girlies. We are off home to sow seeds. We are home and the sun is out. Hail has obviously whizzed past, but first thing I've got to do is mix up some more potting compost because we're out, which is just a mixture of this, which is peat-free potting compost, and some vermiculite. I use about a 1 to 5 measure-ish, so basically a good few handfuls of this, and then fill it up with compost. When I'm mixing the compost and the vermiculite, I always put the vermiculite in the bottom. I think everybody's probably got a different way of doing this, but I find it much easier to mix the vermiculite because you can really feel if you've got a pocket of it. So I put the vermiculite in the bottom of the pot and then cover it with the compost, and then I get my hands right in underneath and you kind of do like a feathering motion with your fingers and you can mix it really, really fast. So if you get right to the bottom, you can pull up the vermiculite through the compost and then you get a really even mix. I find if you put the vermiculite on top, you inevitably just have compost by the time you get to the bottom of your mix. So just pulling it up with your fingers really wide and it kind of, the compost spills through and you can drag the vermiculite up through the mix. Works a treat. And then there you go. That's what we want. So Mum is pricking out celery seedlings, and the first thing on my list to sow is Achocha. And these are saved seed from last year. Look how weird the seeds are. They're like square with a cross in the middle. Anyway, Achocha is a South American fruit. They are climbers, so they climb really, really rampantly. I had 3 plants to myself last year and gave the rest away, and they easily covered like a 7-foot teepee. And yeah, so I'm growing them up one of the arches that's along the edge of the allotment this year. When they grow, these really woody seeds are inside, so even if you pick them really young, you have to kind of scoop out the inside, so they're hollow. These were a new one for me last year, and the seed was given to me by a bloke on Instagram called Ash. And I did try and do a tasting of them on the vlog earlier last year. I don't know if you remember, but unfortunately I forgot to turn the camera on, and by the time I realised we'd eaten them, so that wasn't very successful. But I can assure you they were tasty, somewhere between a cucumber and a green pepper. So what else am I sowing? I'm going to be doing a whole load of brassicas. I've got scarlet kale and dwarf green curled kale to get in. I'm going to be doing a few more Cavolo Nero. I have purple sprouting broccoli, 2 sorts, an early one and a later one, that are going in now. I'm going to be doing a Romanesco cauliflower because I absolutely loved growing them last year. I'm going to also put in some more kohlrabi. Mum's going to be doing some flowers. She's got some delphiniums, which are unlikely to come up because we bought the seed at Hampton Court Flower Show about 10 years ago, but she wants to give them a go. And I've got a couple more peppers to pot up, which are just a bit slower than the other ones. So I've got a few of these guys which I didn't pot up last time I was potting up chilies because they were just sort of too small, but they've come on leaps and bounds since. I've been giving them a lot of feed and they've been sat in a warm place. But I seem to have planted them in dust because these aren't dry. Like, see how the way that soil is just completely crumbling as I'm pulling it out. They're watered, they're wet, so I don't know what kind of mix it was I was using when I sowed those. It might have been, you know, seed compost where it's got kind of nothing in it but sand, basically. So, yeah, I think these are going to really thank me for being put into some proper soil. I hadn't realised that's what they were in, actually, until just now. That would explain why they're so small. Well, we got so much sown last night. This is now Monday and I've been editing today. And yeah, we just got massive sown. And while I was editing the video for that, I realised I haven't actually done a what to sow in May video. I'm all out of whack. But I'll see if I can kind of slot that into something. Because there's masses to sow in May. That was only my first like hit of May sowings. And to be honest, most of the things that I was planning to sow mid-April, I've kind of shunted back into May because, well, just because the weather has been absolutely appalling. Has the weather been really bad, like across the board? So everyone who's not, I know it's been terrible in the UK, but like outside the UK, across the world, like has it been terrible weather or like unseasonable weather? Because not only have we had the really cold nights here, we've got hail. I mean, hail, come now. Dreadful. And then today we've got storm warning. So while I've been at home editing, Mum went up to the allotment and has tied, you know, the covered bed that we've got that's like the mini polytunnel over the bed. She's been kind of roping that down because we're going to have 50-mile-an-hour winds tonight. So what happened this week? Yeah, shame about the weed killer. I am really upset about it, but what I'm hoping is that it was just like a one-off idiot. You know, they've like told someone, oh, can you just like spray around the edge of the pylons or something? And some nincompoops mixed up more spray than they needed and just decided to kind of use it along the edge. That's what I'm hoping has happened, rather than it's somebody who's just decided that this is a good thing to do, because I can excuse it more from somebody who just wasn't thinking and being an idiot than I can actually somebody actively doing that, if you see what I mean. But I do think, ignoring the weed killer bit, I think that side has the potential to be absolutely stunning. Like that cornice that I've put in there is the yellow stemmed dogwood. So like every couple of years you cut it right down to the ground and it fires up really magnificent like golden stems. And just a joy basically. And I've kind of been shunting bits and pieces out there that's going to grow up that side. So on the far end there is actually a Russian vine, which if anybody's ever grown a Russian vine, they are unbelievably rampant. Shimmy that one like along quietly so that it covers the fence. The only problem with it is that they do grow up rather than along, and where it was before they did all that massive changes along the fence, it had climbed up into the trees, and that's not so good. I mean, it's not very good for the trees. So I don't know, I might try and find something a bit tamer to go along the fence. So I did the chard bechamel for lunch, and I really didn't know whether to include it in here or not. So the website's back up. Come on, backtrack, Jessie, get the words out, choose a sentence and go with it. The website's back up. It's not perfect, but it is functioning, and it does mean that all the old recipes that were on there are back up, including the chard lasagna and the beans, which I know I was asked about a lot beforehand. And I'm going to be putting what we used all that chard for that I picked in the Polytunnel yesterday, what we had for lunch. I'm going to be putting that recipe up, which is like it's so simple. It's just chard bechamel, so it's like doing the cauliflower cheese, that sauce, but you stir in the chard, a lot of chard, and then you just bake it like you would a cauliflower cheese, but it's just chard, and you have it as like an accompaniment to something, or you can just have it an accompaniment to a massive amount of bread, which is what I have often. It's not a slimming number, I can tell you. I'm sorry if you can hear a bit of screaming going on outside. There's some kids just down like there, and they've got a trampoline and there's 2 of them on it, and they're just basically screaming, and it's blowing a hoolie out there because of the upcoming 50-mile-an-hour winds. They're like just like on this trampoline jumping around, their hair's going everywhere, and yeah, that's what you can hear. But sorry, going back to the recipe, I have been asked so many times if I can include more kind of, not so much recipes, but like what I actually do with the produce in the vlog, and I'm trying to find a way that I'm comfortable with doing that, because sometimes when I've put a recipe in, it feels really like this is a gardening program, and then I've just like jimmied in a bit of cooking. Do you know what I mean? If you disagree with me, I'd really like to hear your thoughts on that. But talking of recipes, where did I start? I started with talking about chard, didn't I? I'm going to go back to chard now. So when I was picking all that chard in the polytunnel, that's kind of like the first stage of us clearing out the polytunnel, because I mean, it's the first week of May now, and we've really got to get the tomatoes and the peppers in, because I've got them out of my bedroom at last. They're out of the bedroom, they're in the conservatory, but they need to be up at the allotment really, and we need to start prepping the polytunnel, because you know how the beds are really sunk because we only kind of half filled them last time. We've got to fill them up, which means we've got to clear everything out of there, which is all that chard. We've got a lot of chard to eat, and a lot of spinach and a lot of cress. We've got tons of parsley in there and spring onions and things like that, which all need to be scoffed before we then top it up with compost, before we get the tomatoes, the aubergines and the sweet peppers in there, which is what we're going to be growing in there this year. The chilies, melons and cucumbers are all going to be in the greenhouse. That's going to be a major job for next week. Mum's already taken all of that stuff that we sowed yesterday. Mum's taken up, because most of it was kind of brassicas and stuff, which all germinate really easily out, like in not very warm temperatures. So they are in the greenhouse. What we've got down here is I have kept the Achocha here because they need a bit of heat. And I have also got a lot of the cosmos and stuff is still here. All of the chilies, peppers, aubergines, all of that kind of stuff is still here. But I'm hoping that in the next couple of weeks, once we've got past this, whatever this is, this new storminess thing, it's meant to get warm, and hopefully we're going to be able to get everything up to the allotment, which is going to be really exciting. Start kind of filling stuff out, which is pretty good. Also next week, I'm not working an extra day at work. That was only for 1 week, which means that I'm back to normal next week. If it's not absolutely tipping it down, I'm going to be chopping down the field beans, which we've started on one bed. You know where I was planting out the brassicas that we've already got? We started chopping some of them down there, but we're going to be doing the 3 beds because we've got so many brassicas to put out. Like, I don't know what I was doing. And what was I sowing more of yesterday? Brassicas. I got a problem. I have just realised I'm filming this. I don't have anything to cheers you with. I'm just going to fix it. I don't like this bit where I'm like, oh, I'm really sorry, I don't have anything to cheers you with. Right, I'm going to be back in a minute. Yay! It's Monday evening. It's a bank holiday. I hope you've all had a wonderful bank holiday despite the weather. And I'm out of breath. I actually ran for this wine. Like you were waiting for me. I just turned the camera off. You weren't actually all waiting for me. Dearie me. All right, if you enjoyed it, give me the thumbs up. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe. Vlogs every Tuesday, some other thing on a Saturday. And that's all I've got to say. Cheers, chaps. Cheers.